like, comment, subscribe, and if you feel like letting us know what's getting you down in the world of Colorado politics, fill out that comment card below. Now let's go chat New Era and play some Battlefront 2.
Good.
Oh, welcome back, people. A second official YouTube video for New Era Colorado. As we continue this journey to try to change minds, to try to sway people more towards the era of progressive-sided politics for the interests of young people, I felt like it might be helpful to hone in on a comment that I made in the last video. Near the introduction, I said that I by no means was a lifelong progressive, and that I'm basically 5 years fresh to this space. I want to elaborate a little bit on that in an effort to build some credibility with y'all. I work in progressive politics, obviously, for New Era now, but the beliefs and the feelings that I held 5 years ago were radically different. And so as we continue to try and change minds, to open up conversations with families and friends, I thought it would be helpful to share how I got from point A to point B in a relatively harmless way. So that's what we're going to do today. And I want to start where all good stories start, in high school. Throughout most of high school, I was super involved with this group called DECA. This basically student marketing group where we'd go and we'd compete in business competitions. I absolutely loved that community. I loved my teacher, shout out Mr. Oliveto. However, what I didn't see at the time was that this class was helping shape a lot of my political beliefs as well. The first and most foremost being was that I was one of those folks who thought that I was fiscally conservative and socially liberal. Now, for some of you that may be more experienced, I know that that sounds like a contradiction, but on surface value, that ideology seems perfectly rational. And the reason it does is because at the time I viewed the economy as kind of an isolated thing, at the top tier of importance. If we were to handle any problem in this country, it would be to really shore up on our economy, and that would help everything else. It wasn't necessarily connected to everything else, but it would help everything else. Obviously, as a young person in high school, I had a massive amount of love for my friends. However, I didn't understand until a couple years later that the beliefs that I held caused harm to the people that I cared about. And if there's been one consistent thing from the time that I started this journey to where we're at now, it is that I still have an abundance of care towards my friends. That has not changed. The just way that I go about it now is much more effective than it used to be. So we're in high school. We're thinking that the economy from a monetary standpoint is the best way to look at it. And I see that as kind of the right idea, the wrong approach. The economy in the US especially, where we have this deep-rooted history of white supremacy and harm towards marginalized communities, centering the economy is not necessarily a bad thing, because with wealth inequality and racial inequality and class inequality, the economy dictates a lot of that. My problem was that I viewed the economy as an isolated thing. And this caused harm to my friends. There's one example in particular that I feel immense shame for, that I'm trying to work on not feeling shame for, because it was a learning moment. But this was shortly after we had started college and we had returned home for COVID. And there was an advocate from my high school who was posting a lot online about how COVID was disproportionately affecting Black and brown communities. And I thought this was the most absurd thing that I had ever heard. What do you mean a virus can be racist? So my way of handling this was not to do any research on my own, not to do any reading, heavens no. And we went directly to the source, and I DM'd him. And it started this long, exacerbated argument where, looking back, I clearly had no idea what I was talking about. But this is an example of how that mindset causes harm. When you look at these things as isolated issues, you're ignoring the 250 years of history put into them. I believe that this mindset came from an upbringing in the US. You will hear me mention this quite a bit throughout these videos just because It's an obvious fact that our childhood shapes our adulthood, and the indoctrination we face in the US as children is especially a heavy weight. And that's where I really felt that bubble of your childhood hometown burst for the first time. And that's about half the work. The way that I saw it was that you go somewhere, like college is a great, easy example of somewhere you go to be exposed to ideas and lives and contexts that you were not previously aware of. That's the first step. The second step is being willing to listen to all of those other perspectives and ideas, to exhaust your research on them until you figure out something different. If we were all the same person we were in high school, life would be horrible, I think. COVID slows down, we go back to in-person. I returned to school, and I, at the time, was studying business and economics with a minor in Arabic because I wanted to go into oil because the economy and financial gain. Those were my bread and butter. However, I'd heard that there was a YDSA meeting, a Young Democratic Socialists of America meeting, and I thought, what a better place to go and own the libs than a YDSA meeting. So I showed up, and for the life of me, I cannot recall what that first meeting was about, but I remember sitting down with two people and having a conversation about my beliefs. I was given suggestions for reading, and I decided that the worst possible thing I could do was not read the books. So there were two of these. I gave them a read, and I started to think, maybe I'm not right. Maybe I have been mistaken and misled because the things that I'm reading make a whole lot more sense than the kind of like sporadic floating around beliefs that I did have. I began reading a lot. And like I said, the big change was not that I was breaking out of my bubble. It was that I found a willingness to be exposed to thoughts that I thought were so wrong they were hilarious, like going to a YDSA meeting and learning about systemic racism. What followed was a gradual and consistent change in how I acted towards other people. One of the very first things that I did after continuing conversations and continuing the reading was I stopped at a table in the UMC where I spoke to an organizer named Kate and signed up to volunteer with an organization called New Era Colorado that focused on educating other young people about politics and helping young people on their political journey. Since then, my future has kind of been built out for me. I began consistently showing up to every single community engagement opportunity that I could for New Era, and it inevitably led to me having a job in the organizing space. So we started on economics, business, and Arabic so that I could go into oil, and now I'm sitting here at 10:30 a.m. on a Wednesday making YouTube content for a progressive nonprofit that focuses on young people. A very dramatic change. However, if we break it down and look at the individual steps, I started with an abstract set of foundless beliefs about politics. I went to a place where I was exposed with a diverse range of thought, similar to that diversity of thought topic that we talked about last time. And the biggest chunk of effort there was taking the initiative once I had gotten into that community with diverse thought. So in reality, my story is not one that's terribly exciting or filled with grandiose, dramatic moments, but rather a very simple one that required some fundamental principles of self-education that we're going to talk about on this channel. That being said, one of New Era's focuses for young people getting engaged in politics is being able to share your story. When you go and testify on an issue, when you go to a public comment at city council and talk about something that's affecting your quality of life, even when you are just going door to door and talking to voters, or sitting at a table and talking to your friends, or sitting at a table and registering people to vote, being able to share your story in a way that has a start and an end and some clear steps in the middle is one of the most effective ways that we can create political change. The next time that legislative session comes around, or the next time an issue is affecting people at a local level and there's a city council meeting about it, Think about this video. Think about the story, however mundane you might think it is. It could be the effective piece that makes a decision change in an elected's brain. I hope that moving forward on this videos, understanding a little bit about me and why I'm doing this and why I'm here makes it a little bit easier to process what we're going to be talking about. I would also like to thank you for sticking around for a slightly shorter video. I do want to give a heads up that it's September where we're going to be coming back with a very special guest on the show. My hope is to play Mario Kart or something adjacent with them and talk about one of the most prevalent current event issues in Colorado right now. The reason that you can't get your SNAP benefits, the reason that parents can't get childcare, the reasons why public schools are getting shut down. And I'll give you a hint. It's Tabor. Alrighty, thanks for tuning in, and I will see you guys in a month. Toodles.